I ended up going to 2 different antique malls this weekend. I ended up finding a ton of NES games, some Halo books, and some other stuff that you might be interested in. So let's head out there. All right, so I just pulled up in front of this antique mall. So let's go ahead and head in there and see if we can find anything good that's worth picking up. So I made my way into Next Generations in search of video games. This is an antique mall that has a bunch of different booths in it. And of course, I have to wander around while I am here. And the first booth I found ended up having this Mario costume for Halloween. This is unfortunately a kid's costume and has been here for a long time. So I left that behind and I looked around a little bit more. And that is when I ended up finding a few Pokemon VHS tapes, which is pretty awesome here. Definitely cool to see these in the wild. However, I wish these were much cheaper, a little too expensive, so I left them behind and continued on to this booth where I found, again, another Halloween mask, but this is like a cheap, crappy one, and they wanted a little too much for this. If this was like half the price, I probably would have grabbed it. A few DVDs here, no games, unfortunately. So then I kept going through this antique mall, searching for some video games. I ended up finding this funny Fisher-Price controller, which just absolutely makes me laugh when I see these things out in the wild. And then I found this Nintendo Switch lanyard, as well as a bunch of other awesome lanyards here. I thought about picking one of these up, and I looked for a while, but honestly, I didn't really find anything that just kind of jumped out to me, so that was left behind. Then I continued into that booth where I ended up finding this kind of keyboard controller for gaming. I don't know, but it caught my eye, as well as this little Mario candy dispenser fan thing, which was interesting, I guess. Then I made my way to this booth where they had some expensive Lego Minecraft stuff, but nothing worth it there. Then down below, this booth has been here for a long time and has pretty much not sold very many games, and there is a good reason for that. These are all way too overpriced and definitely not worth picking up. So then I continued on to the owner of this store's booth where he has a glass case and a bunch of video games here, but unfortunately, not really anything new since the last time I came through here. When I was here last, I found a bunch of Game Boy games that were well priced, but it seemed like they've been pretty wiped out, so nothing there, which is kind of a bummer because usually I can find at least one thing here, but not this time it seems. So I quickly hurried up and moved on to this booth, which has a bunch of Xbox 360 games, but as you can tell by those purple cases, they're all Kinect games, and I'm not really interested in them. So I made my way to this little booth closet thing, where I found this Call of Duty like collector's edition for the Xbox 360, and I thought about getting it, but then I ended up looking at it, and it was missing the manual and the other disc in it, so unfortunately I ended up having to leave that behind, which is kind of a bummer. But I spotted this mug that's 12 bucks. I don't know if that's a good deal or a bad deal. Saw some Destiny 2s, and then I made my way to this booth where this game selection here has forever been shrinking and honestly doesn't ever have much that's worth it. I found a few games here in the corner here, but unfortunately it seemed like I have definitely struck out at this antique mall, which is kind of a bummer, but sadly we didn't end up finding anything in this antique store, but I do have a place I want to go to tomorrow, so hopefully that can make up for this kind of lackluster antique mall today.
One eternity later.
All right, so it's the next day. So I just pulled up to the antique mall here. So let's head into it and hope that we actually find something, because yesterday it didn't go so well. So I made my way into this antique mall in search of video games since, well, you know, the first one didn't happen. Then I ended up spotting this, which was pretty cool, but it was a little too expensive. So I continued on through this flea market, and I ended up finding a few games here. Unfortunately, these are games I already have, a few games up top which were interesting, and then a few down below. All of these have been here for a while and have definitely been picked through, so I kind of checked them out to see if there was anything new, but nothing really. Then I ended up finding this Slowpoke plush, but unfortunately they wanted a little too much. If it was just like half that price, I would definitely pick this up, but it is what it is. Then I found this personal training golf game, which was pretty interesting, but again, a little too expensive, so I left it behind. Then I made my way into this booth, which had a ton of Disney Infinity things here, and as you can tell, they were charging too much still. Then I turned around and found these NES controllers. This is a knockoff one, so I didn't even bother picking it up or anything like that. For $5 if it was real, I probably would have, but not for a knockoff. Then I found a few more games down below in this shelf here, but again, nothing's jumping out at me, and I hope we don't end up striking out, but at least I know where to find 4 or 5 copies of NHL 2022 that is still sealed for the Xbox One, so I guess that's a positive. A few Xbox 360 games here, but again, these have been picked through, unfortunately. And then I ended up spotting Skylanders in the corner of this booth for the Wii. Still nothing good here. I found a few little figures here and there in this booth. I don't really wanted to pick up any of these, unfortunately. There were some cool ones like this little Mario Lego, but he's definitely missing some stuff, as well as a few Minecraft things. A little Pikachu down here, but not really feeling this one either. It's kind of a cheaper one, so I kind of left this booth behind in hopes of finding something good here, and then I kind of kept walking here where I made my way to a few more booths. I walked for a while until I got to this booth. A few games here and there. As you can tell, it's definitely good to see these, but again, nothing's jumping out at me yet, which is kind of a bummer, but things just changed. My luck has changed and come around at this booth. As you can tell, they have a ton of Wii games down here, as well as a few other games up above that are definitely well worth looking at least. This Naruto game I ended up grabbing for sure. Then I kept looking again through the PS3 section. I thought about this Medieval Moves, but I think I already have it in my collection. Anytime I see a guitar here, I'll always at least look to see how much they are. And then I ended up finding some Xbox 360 games that were definitely worth picking up. Starting off with Quake 4. I don't have this in my collection, and for that price, I am definitely going to grab that, as well as this GoldenEye 007 Reloaded. I grabbed both of those 2 games and ended up getting 3 games from this booth for a pretty good price, actually. So then I continued on and found this booth. Like, everything was dry and I wasn't finding anything, and now I'm finding booths with a ton of games, a bunch of Xbox 360 and Xbox One games here. I looked through again, and that is when I ended up finding a few games here that I was just checking out. But then I ended up finding the Amazing Spider-Man here for the Xbox 360, which was definitely well worth picking up. For that price, I don't think I have this in my collection, so I definitely am glad that I found that. So I went ahead and grabbed that. And then to the right, I saw a ton of NES games here. These were all priced between like $5 and like $8. And so obviously I had to look through it. I had to see what was there. We'll talk about everything that I did get. But I also found a few Halo Xbox books. These were awesome. I ended up getting The Flood, The Fall of Reach, and First Strike, which was cool. These were $2 each. I ended up seeing these Pokemon and other Halo books, but I didn't end up grabbing those, but I did end up grabbing all of these NES games. We'll talk about the price and everything at the end here, but definitely cool to still be able to find NES games for this cheap out in the wild. Then again, the next booth, I ended up finding a bunch of video games or consoles here. Nothing here that I had to have or really wanted to spend my money. Those were pretty much fair market prices, and I didn't really need any of those, so I left those behind. Then I made my way over to the games, which this booth has definitely been picked through, so I left those games behind as well. I continued on where I made my way to this booth where I spotted a few Switch games here in this glass case, but nothing I had to have or games I didn't already own, so I continued on out of that booth, and so I continued on down this row here, and that is when I spotted this Pikachu plush, which is kind of an interesting plush because when you grab it, it actually lights up and its ears move, which were pretty cool, so I definitely had to grab this for my collection. I looked it up. That thing's worth like 25 bucks or so picking it up for that is cheap. Then I made my way into this booth. I'm kind of getting towards the end of the antique mall here. Found a little Pikachu bag. I found a little Mario plush here on the left, and then a Toad plush here. These have been here for a little bit, so I didn't pick those up. Then I noticed a few games over here, which they had been kind of moved around, so I had to check those out since I was over here, of course. And then I kind of started my way, kind of making my way back to the back when I ended up finding a Pikachu plush. And then I ended up finding this Minecraft cheetah, which was pretty cool, as well as this Chain Chomp. But I think someone made this themselves, so I didn't find a tag or anything for it, so I just ended up leaving that behind. And while I went up to the cash register to check out, I found a few games here and there, so nothing I had to find. And Superman for the 64 is definitely worth it. But I ended up finding a ton of awesome stuff here. The first antique mall, as you could see, I didn't end up finding anything and got out of that pretty quickly. And then obviously the next day, today, I had to pick up all this other stuff. And we'll just start off all these Halo books. These were only $2 a book, and these were from like 2003, 2001, 2003. So when I saw these for $2, I had to grab them. I don't know too much about them, but just the nostalgia of seeing these and having these in my collection for $6. Those are staying in my collection all day long. And then I ended up finding some disc-based games here. You saw me find The Amazing Spider-Man for the Xbox 360. That was definitely well worth picking up. Then I ended up getting Naruto Shippuden, The Clash of Ninja Revolution 3. That is a very, very long name, but I grabbed this for the Wii at that one booth, where I also grabbed these two Xbox 360 games, GoldenEye Reloaded 007. This game looks interesting to me. I don't know anything about it. I don't know if it's actually the like GoldenEye and it's just like remade, or if this is like the same name but a different game. I don't know too much about it. But then I ended up finding Quake 4, which absolutely looks awesome. I cannot wait to play this on my Xbox 360. I haven't played this in ages, so this is definitely cool. I don't have this in my collection either, so that's even better. I don't know what happened to my copy from back in the day. Maybe I sold it or something, but I'm glad to have that in my collection. Then I ended up finding this Pikachu plush, which makes noise when you squeeze it, which I think is pretty cool, and its ears go up or down, and his face lights up there. So for $10, this was definitely cool to see. And last but not least, we found all these NES games, which is just crazy. I think for the most part, these were like $6 to $7 to $8. So I ended up grabbing Dino Wars here for $7. The artwork on this just looks absolutely insane. So when I saw this, I had to grab it. Next is called Z-Cross. I never know how to pronounce this. If you know how to pronounce it, put it down below. I ended up getting this for $7 as well. So I grabbed that. Then I spent a little extra and got Mystery Quest for $8, which again is cool to see out in the wild. Some of these, I'm going to say, kind of more obscure games. They're not really expensive, but they are a little bit more obscure. The Secret Scroll Flying Dragon. Again, this one was $8 as well. Not a game you see out in the wild so very often. So that's cool there. We then also spent $8 on Defender of the Crown here, which, again, sometimes I see this, but not as often as like the normal games. Then Q*bert was $7. This is an absolutely amazing game. I don't know why this is so cheap, but I'm not going to complain there at all. We got Cybernoid the Fighting Machine for $7. Again, another one of those awesome games. Then we've got Deadly Towers here for $7 again. And last but not least is Top Secret Episode Go 13. I always have trouble with that, but that was also $7. So, these were some insane NES games to find out in the wild, purely because they were under $10 for NES games, and they weren't like your basic games that you see out in the wild. So when I saw all of these, I was like, okay, I'm going to end up buying a bunch of games here. But overall, this place ended up being really, really good. I found a bunch of awesome stuff here. Like this stack alone of books, games, and this little Pikachu was good enough, and I would have been happy, but also finding all these NES games is absolutely crazy. So I'm so thankful that I went to the second antique mall, because the first one, like you saw, was a dud, but that happens occasionally. Sometimes you'll go out and find some amazing stuff, and then other times it's just meh. So it is what it is. I just keep my head up and keep hunting, and you'll find some good stuff eventually. But enough about that. I gotta get out of here, so check that video out if you haven't already. But this NES stack is pretty crazy. Anytime I find NES games in my area, it's usually like $15-20 a game. So this is really awesome. But enough about that. I gotta get out of here, so check that video out if you haven't already.